Welcome in to another episode of the Losing Sucks Fantasy Football Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Dustin Blanton, along with my co-host, Travis Masterson. I am so sorry, Travis.
Episode 72, it's bound to happen.
Yeah, we've done it 72 times, and I finally screwed up. So from now on, you're just Travis. We're gonna clean it up on the front end. But today, Travis, we're talking some week 2 narratives. We're talking some other fun stuff, but more importantly, it's about who we're talking it with. And today we're joined by none other than Matt Hicks. He is the resident football expert over there at the Rookie Big Board. You can follow him on Twitter at the FF Educator. Here he is, Matt Hicks. Thank you so much for joining the show. How are you, sir? It's week 1. Merry post-Christmas. It's like that week in between Christmas and New Year's. We're just kind of letting it set in.
We're still riding high. It's week 2. There's no bad rosters yet. It's week 3 of college football, right? So I like to remind folks of that as well. So we are all in on football season. It is a fantastic time of the year, and I'm happy to be on with you, fellas.
Oh, we appreciate you taking the time, man. Appreciate you taking the time. Fantasy football, like you said, there's no bad rosters yet. Especially in college right now, there are bad teams. I happen to be a fan of one of them, Notre Dame. And
tough weekend.
Really tough couple of weekends. And I also happen to be a Texas fan. And so there's it's just
there's at least some optimism there. We could rose-colored glasses that one.
Sure. Yeah, there's hope. Oh, we could have won. Yeah, it's really close. We'll get into some college stuff during the show. Of course, we want to pick your brain, us not being the college expert that you are, but we are definitely fans. Like you said, though, we had a bunch of fantasy football fun, and we want to talk about it. You know, we had our show for week 1. We had our heartbreaks and guys who performed well for us. I want to ask you the same question, though. Are there any guys that kind of hurt your feelings in week 1 that you could maybe have some hope for of bouncing back in week 2?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, my mind always goes to the rookies, and I think the one that a lot of folks got nervous about is James Cook, right? That Thursday night Island game, he fumbles on his first carry, gets pulled off the field. I think things are going to get better for James Cook, though. I'm holding out some optimism. You know, I wasn't somebody who took him in the first round, but I got plenty of James Cook there in the second round, and I'm still excited for it. I think it was a little bit of an odd scheme for the Bills this past weekend. I don't think they're going to be in that situation quite often, and I think they're going to need him to be on the field. So that's the one I'm holding out hope for. But, man, after week 1, it's easy to overreact. It's easy to get into your head about it.
Right. No, for sure. For sure. Especially with a guy taken in the second round of the NFL draft, James Cook was, like you said, someone that a lot of fantasy fans were really hoping would just, draft capital means he's going to be the guy. So maybe we'll hold out hope for a few weeks longer just to see how that plays out. I know I'm happy Travis dropped him in our home league.
Would you drop James Cook? I don't know who I dropped him for. Would you drop him for somebody like Jeff Wilson right now?
Man, it's tough. That's tough. I would hold out James Cook, and it's one of those ones where you might get to week 4 and say, I should have given up on him quicker, but it's just not somebody I'm willing to cut bait on yet, right? Especially for Jeff Wilson, I get it. He's going to be a waiver wire target this week, and for obvious reasons, but that's still an ugly-looking committee as well. You know, you look at Buffalo, Singletary looked good when they gave him the ball, but they didn't show a propensity to want him to get the ball either. Zach Moss looked Zach Moss-esque, right? So that wasn't exciting either. So I think if you're going to dig into a running back by committee, you might as well shoot for upside. I'm not sure how much Jeff Wilson has.
That's true. I feel like they have to get inside the 5 for him to have a chance to bring you value, which is not the type of player that I usually like. I usually err on the side of give me the guy between the 20s. If they happen to get in the end zone, that's just a bonus. But I want the yards. Give me the volume guy. Even if he has somebody, if that particular player has somebody that comes in at the goal line and takes most of that, your guys are still bound to score eventually from 15, 20 yards out. So I like the volume guys, particularly pass catching guys. So yeah, maybe I shouldn't have dropped him. But it's when you have home leagues and you have 5 bench spots, those are the tough decisions that you have to make. Like, you're not going to drop Allen Lazard over dropping James Cook for somebody you think you could start. So
we'll see. And he's somebody who probably is going to hang out on the waiver wire. Like, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a top target right on that second run once things open up. So it's one of those things where, he could sit there and you just got to know when to grab him back up before he has that huge game. But I like how you mentioned the pass catching work. I mean, that's the upside there with James Cook, right? You're even looking at Javonte Williams. His rushing stats on Monday night were not that great in week 1, but he made up for it in pass catching, right? And so having that safety net is always good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Career high in targets for him, which was surprising, and there were a lot of guys this week that kind of maybe took us by surprise. Was there anyone this week, Matt, that took you by surprise? And also on the other side of that, was there anyone that you maybe see that you're starting to get concerned with now heading into week 2?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've always been big on Michael Pittman. I've got him in a lot of spots, but it was a pleasant surprise to see him absolutely pop off, finish as a top 6 guy right there. 13 targets. I mean, that's what we want to see. If you really put that into context, think about who Michael Pittman is. Like, he's your X downfield, big target wide receiver.
Yeah.
That type of guy is getting 13 targets in his first game with a new quarterback, a quarterback we know wants to air the ball out in an offense that we felt all offseason wanted to be more balanced. I mean, that's exciting. And I feel like people are excited about it, but I don't think people are as excited about it. Like, Michael Pittman is looking to be a locked-in wide receiver 1 moving forward. And I think valuing him at anything less than that is absolutely underappreciating what he's doing. So, he's somebody right now, if I'm looking to add another piece and maybe try to get sneaky and a little bit ahead of the curve, even though he had a big game, I think there's a lot more coming.
What type of player would you attempt to move for Pittman right now?
Yeah, so I'm looking at somebody who maybe is getting a little bit of hype here, right? But maybe a little overvalued. So, if you could do a package here with a wide receiver 2 plus Cordero Patterson, I think that would be an interesting deal to flip there. Maybe even moving CMC for Pittman plus another piece, that kind of deal where you can kind of just pivot off of it. And, it's probably going to have to involve another piece in there because I think 1 for 1, most folks are going to look at it. But, even a Joe Mixon for Michael Pittman, if somebody wanted to do that in your league, Aaron Jones, I would make the move. I really think that Pittman's going to be an impact player down the line.
That's
maybe turn some uncertainty.
Those are some big names. That's confidence right there.
Turn some uncertainty like a Michael Thomas into a Michael Pittman. Michael Thomas plus for Michael Pittman could get you somewhere.
I think that's the more rational approach, right? Like do that package type deal, like a Patterson plus a Thomas, to get up to Pittman. Those kind of package deals is probably what it's going to be. And Thomas is a popular name. I'm seeing a lot, in the Discord, and a lot of people talking about Michael Thomas today and what his value is. And he's somebody that just makes me so nervous. So if you can package him up to another wide receiver, Pittman or otherwise, I think that's a really nice call.
Yeah, I like it. Who is someone that you're concerned with? We saw a lot of different game flows play out. Who's someone that you not really sure if they're going to see the role that we thought they were going to, or never got the opportunity in week 1?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is Breece Hall. Folks are looking at that, and I don't think it's so much Breece Hall as Michael Carter. Michael Carter looks good. I was actually at the Jets game, Ravens guy, so got down to MetLife and saw that matchup. Nice. It was a good one for me, but Michael Carter looks sharp, and Breece Hall ended up with 10 targets and kind of a weird offense. They're rocking the first probably 4 weeks with Joe Flacco. It was a lot of check down work. So if you look at a box score, Breece Hall's stat line looks pretty decent, but when Zach Wilson is back out there, he's not getting 10 targets at the line of scrimmage, which is essentially what he got this last week. So to see Michael Carter come out as running back 1, it wasn't just coach talk, and he looked good. He performed well against a tough Ravens defense. In terms of seasonal, I think we have to really, cut back our expectations of Breece Hall. And I still think he's going to be a fine running back 2 level player. But this idea of him coming out as a rookie and smashing as an RB1, it's probably not going to be that way. I think we got a little spoiled over the last couple of years with, the Jonathan Taylors and DeAndre Swifts and Najee Harris's as kind of consensus rookie running back one.
It would have to take an injury to Michael Carter, I think.
Yeah.
And this was something that we talked about all offseason. Dustin and I, we disagreed quite a bit on what Breece was going to do. I was quoted by comparing Breece Hall to Royce Freeman. I don't think that Breece Hall is just an absolute
Come on, man.
game-changing
We
monster
gotta bring that up.
of a running back. And I actually said Michael Carter will out-target Breece Hall on the season if both stay healthy. And we had people tweeting and commenting on the show saying this guy's crazy. Dustin himself said you are crazy to say that.
You are crazy. It's week 1.
I know. I'm just saying, every time I clicked on that game on Sunday Ticket, when I would click on the Jets, it was Michael Carter every time. And 100 yards to 61 yards, 17 to 12 touches. I think it's if it's not Carter's backfield first, if it's not a 1A, 1B, it is definitely a 50-50 until something happens to Carter.
It feels like we're setting ourselves up for the. No, it just feels like the Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon thing over again, right? Like, how long are we going to hold on to that and we, it's a tough split. Like it's the NFL versus the fantasy football timeline, right?
And it's going to be ugly for the Jets. The next 5 or 6 weeks are gross.
Sure.
The teams they're playing are really, really good.
I don't know. I just think I'm hoping it's more closer to like a Mike Davis, David Montgomery situation where we see Michael Carter that first week and then Breece Hall gets to take over. So I don't know. I'm probably way too optimistic about Breece Hall. Like you said, Matt, it's probably going to be that Melvin and Javonte split. That's probably just coach speak plus what we've seen week 1. Like you said, it's probably the reality that we're living in. It's a sad, sad reality. It mirrors another situation that is kind of hanging over like a gloomy, gloomy day over one of my favorite prospects in the last couple of years. Travis Etienne has a huge James Robinson problem. And it kills me because if you watch these two dudes on the field, Travis Etienne is easily the more electric player. He can do more. He can do kind of what James Robinson does. But then he also is a dynamic playmaker out in open space. So it kills me to see that he only had a handful of touches. He had 4 carries. He had 4 targets, 2 catches. It just, granted, he missed that touchdown, being overthrown, and that, the fumble probably didn't help him in that game. But man, you can't look at these two guys and tell me that they're the same. But James Robinson has been the starter, and he is seen as a guy who can carry the load, got to establish the run, and of course Doug Peterson wanting to have a committee just de facto, disregard anyone else in the talent level that they have. Please tell me that you think Etienne's role will improve, or are you thinking that this is kind of going to be just a gloomy, gloomy, overcast season for this backfield?
I mean, I'm right there with you. It's frustrating because I think if you just use the eye test, you understand that Etienne is the more talented player. I think the upside here is that there were a good amount of targets for Etienne this week, relative to the way the game flowed. So that's the upside. But I almost wonder if Etienne being such a flexible weapon is hurting him to a degree. Like, do the Jaguars not know how exactly they want to use him? Do they want to use him as a pass catching option, as a running back? I think what's most troubling for the Etienne fans is James Robinson is on his 3rd coaching staff that he continues to win like the majority of carries with. So clearly this guy is good, right? Whether we like it or not. So I do think we have to tailor our expectations for Travis Etienne just a little bit. But here's the thing. I think he's still going to have some big weeks. So he almost might play himself into that point of frustration where he ends up on our bench, has a big week. We put him in our lineup. He doesn't have a big week. We take him out, and we have this vicious cycle of just wanting Etienne to be good.
Yep.
That hurts. that hurts to hear.
I don't want it. I would love it.
I know.
So much Etienne. I'm with you. It's tough.
Yeah.
I can't believe James Robinson's healthy. I can't. I thought there's absolutely no way that he comes back before halfway through the year. And I thought by then Etienne will be clearly the lead dog and have a role established. And this is just much like the Cam Akers deal, I thought he's going to come out week 1, be fine, and just start to get rolling. And there's a lot of backfields right now that are going to be muddy for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are. I mean, heck, we've got one with a similar situation in, Los Angeles. You're talking about heavy draft capital, third, fourth round of a lot of drafts where Cam Akers was taken. And now you're seeing that safety valve running back that, is just dependable and more importantly, healthy in Darrell Henderson. And that's kind of a question I want to ask you, Matt. The first week, you never want to see the Buffalo Bills, especially in their current state, completely healthy, even if you are playing at home. And you can ask the Rams that, but they're heading to Atlanta. Are you hoping, or I guess, are you still concerned with Akers? Are you taking him? Travis has suggested in our previous shows that you take him out of your starting lineup because you have to see what happens. Is that something that you're also practicing? And what concerns, if any, do you have for the other weapons for the Rams other than Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, well, Cooper Kupp is safe, thankfully. They can't take Cooper Kupp from us, all right? Unfortunately, it looks like they're taking Cam Akers from us. I agree, Travis. I think you got to put him on your bench at least for the next week, the next 2 weeks. I think potentially most concerning, the snap count was 54-12, right? Between Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. Reading between the lines a little bit can get you in trouble, but if you look this offseason, they were really excited about Kyren Williams before he suffered another injury preseason. And Kyren Williams was a guy I really liked coming out. And I thought it was because they liked Kyren Williams relative to Darrell Henderson. But now reading between the lines, I wonder if they realized that Cam Akers needed to be on a little bit of a pitch count or a rotational role, whatever you want to call it. And they were excited for Kyren Williams to be a part of that. Yeah. So moving forward, and they do have more depth down the depth chart. I know they like at running back, right? So I think you have to proceed with caution when it comes to Cam Akers. Now, the other weapon, of course, that we're worried about in the Rams offense is Allen Robinson. And I'm holding out a little bit more hope for Allen Robinson. I think it was a little bit of a forced game script. I don't think the Rams are really doing what they wanted to do. And I'm always very cautious about overreacting to what I would call like an island game, right? Like Thursday night football, the first game of the season, even Monday night football, when everybody's eyes are on it, we tend to over adjust in those games. So Allen Robinson is a guy who, if I need to slide him in that flex spot, I'm willing to do it. Am I the most confident this week? No, but I am willing to give him another shot before I cast him off into the same bucket that I put Cam Akers in.
Yeah, I mean, it would not. The question I asked myself when making that kind of decision after being high on Allen Robinson, very high all offseason, is if he were to come out and have 100 to 120 yards and a score this weekend, would you be shocked at that performance? And I would not.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like he could easily do that with the attention Cooper Kupp's going to get. You get Atlanta. If you watch the tape, and there's a lot of it on Twitter of where Allen Robinson was, there were a lot of chances, and Matt Stafford just had no time. They were under duress all night. He was forcing it to Kupp. I feel like Allen Robinson is a great buy low. I still think Allen Robinson is going to be around that top 20, probably inside the top 20. He'll hit 1,000 yards. He's going to have some pop-off games. Week 2 could be a huge bounce back for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I hope so. I mean, I got a lot of shares, Allen Robinson.
A lot. You know who we don't have any shares of, though, Matt? We don't have any shares of Kyle Pitts.
0.
And
you and me both.
All right. Are you sad about it, or you saw this coming too?
I mean, here's the thing. It was a weird week in terms of Atlanta. I mean, I am a Marcus Mariota fan, and I actually have a ton of Marcus Mariota. I love the price there. I play primarily super flex league, so it was a really good quarterback 2-3 to have on your roster, and he threw 0 touchdowns, so that's a little concerning. But at the end of the day, Kyle Pitts really, relative to Drake London, was not prioritized as the top passing option in the offense. So that could be a 1-week thing, or this could be a long-term. I've never wanted to pay the price with Kyle Pitts all the way back to when he was coming out as a rookie. And then certainly, pushing first and second round ADP this year, I thought was just too rich in this offense that is going to drop in volume, right? The touchdowns were going to drop naturally with Marcus Mariota. And the thing is, looking out, Drake London is a much better red zone target through and through. He went 5 for 74. If Drake London had even snuck in like a 2-yard touchdown, we would be so excited about Drake London's stat line this past week, right? Yeah. I think Kyle Pitts was 2 for 19 off the top of my head. It was not an impressive number. So
7
for
targets,
me,
though.
Yes. Yo, sorry. Actually, what was his target number? I don't have that.
Yeah, seven targets.
Okay, so you could look at that two ways, but probably a
Sure.
positive, right? Targets overall.
Right, I hope so.
Yeah. So I think that's positive, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who's the touchdown guy, right? Like who's the red zone guy in that offense? Because Marcus Mariota's not going to throw 40 of them. He's probably going to throw 27 of them. So where's that going to land is going to be the big question. Obviously, if you drafted Kyle Pitts in the first or second round, you got to roll him out next week. You don't have that option.
Yeah, I don't. Unless you picked up Taysom Hill.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's, oh, goodness. I can't imagine the feeling. But
if you're starting Taysom Hill over Kyle Pitts, please send me a screenshot of that starting lineup. I would love to see it.
Oh, someone needs a hug or
see
a drink. Yeah,
that's a full tilt moment. Yeah,
that's so rough. You nailed it right on the head though, because the touchdowns are going to be the factor there, and especially with his draft capital, we just assumed you have to regress towards the mean and the positive regression, and he's got to score more, and yeah, he'll probably score more than one, but is it going to be 10 that you need to probably, pay off that draft capital? It's hard to imagine that with this offense.
Vegas's lines for Atlanta preseason were horrific for what they expect that passing offense to be, and they were the same for Miami. I think Tua was like 37, 38, maybe 3,600 yards. It was, and if Waddle didn't break that off and take it to the house, that was an ugly day for Tua. That saved his entire day. He still only had 15 fantasy points, but people are saying, Tua's fine and this offense is going to be. It's not. It's really not. I a lot of red flags. I watched a lot of the Miami game because I'm anti-Tua, but I am pro Marcus Mariota. I also have him in a couple Superflex leagues. I think he's a good player. I think it's unfortunate that the last 3 or 4 years, which should have been his prime, he didn't get a real shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Because I would have liked to have seen it, and I think he could have been one of those dual threat guys. But for Kyle Pitts, the attention he's going to get, I don't see him getting to 1,000 yards. Because these 19 to 35 yard games, if they happen 4 or 5 times over the course of the year, he has to answer that with 120. And how many of those? Maybe 1 or 2. I just don't see it. Matt Ryan is probably Hall of Fame quarterback, and the drop off to Mariota when there's no other threats, I'm very scared of Kyle Pitts. Yeah.
Well, we can't always have top receiving options on our team, Matt, like Devin Duvernay. He's obviously the top option there, and we're just gonna have to accept the fact that Mark Andrews, another top receiving option at tight end, is just gonna have to take a back seat because he's Lamar's favorite now, and I'm sure you agree.
Listen, all I'm saying is, Devin Duvernay was one of my guys coming out in that draft class. That was a few years back now. 2019 draft class maybe was Duvernay. So I tried to coin the nickname Big Play Duvernay. I don't know if it actually stuck anywhere, but I have been to, probably about 5 or 6 Ravens games now, but the last 2 I've gone to, Devin Duvernay put up a touchdown last season, and he put up 2 when I was in attendance this year. So I think I got to keep going to games. It's the only way we're going to make this Duvernay thing happen. But I think a lot of folks, it was a weird game. It was pouring rain. It was not an ideal offense, but Lamar still ended up throwing 3 touchdown passes, I believe. And Rashad Bateman did snag one of those, which was fantastic. But otherwise, Rashad Bateman just 2 receptions on, I believe, 5 targets. And
what is that about?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
You were at the game. I need some analysis on this, Matt.
Did Gardner spend a lot of time covering
I will
Bateman?
say the Ravens' offense did not look in season. Like the stat line worked out fine because they were playing the Jets, and they controlled that game. But the rushing attack wasn't there. Lamar had some big passes, and that was blown coverage, right? Like Bateman got past this guy. He was wide open. And so that was a pretty easy one relatively to make. Obviously, Bateman had to get open. I'm not taking it away from him. But, in terms of the crispness of the passing game, it wasn't really there yet. So
do you think it's because they didn't have the threat of the play action that they've had for so long?
Yeah, I mean, Mike Davis was not scaring anybody in that game. And, potentially even more horrific was I think Kenyon Drake was a little bit more efficient on the ground. So I think the Ravens are in a little bit of trouble till they can get Dobbins back out there.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree. That rushing attack, yeah. Anytime you see Kenny and Drake and Mike Davis in the backfield, it's like, okay, we don't really have to be too worried.
There's no respect there, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Is I feel like they can just drop back and say we're not, RPOs, all that. It looks so different when they don't have one of those guys that can pop one off. So.
Yeah, an interesting anomaly there too was, I wouldn't have the stats in front of me for how often he covered him, but Sauce Gardner was actually down on Mark Andrews a good amount that game, which is kind of a crazy matchup, and Sauce played well against Andrews, so
yeah, it
would be interesting to track kind of how opposing defenses view the top target in the offense. Are they going to put their best corner on Rashad Bateman, or are they going to slide him down to Mark Andrews? At which point would be a big perk for Rashad Bateman if he's able to draw lesser coverage.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Sauce Gardner, man, he's definitely someone that I was afraid to start Bateman against, which is a crazy thought against a rookie.
He's good.
He is very good. Yeah. I mean, not all of the rookies are good. Especially, I mean, heck, ask Houston how Michael Pittman is. But you're getting back into kind of what your realm is. Obviously fantasy, but we're talking more Devy stuff. I want to talk some Devy. Travis is just now getting into dynasty, and having an expert such as yourself, I want to get your take on this upcoming super class. It is the 2023 draft class, because it's all we hear about in the community. We had Felix Sharp on telling from Campus of Canton telling us some stuff, about his favorite prospects. Who are some guys that we should be keeping an eye out heading into the next draft class?
Yeah, Felix is great, by the way. Campus of Canton, a tremendous resource. I sub to those guys. I would highly encourage it for anybody looking to take a little bit deeper of a dive, get on over to the college side. And don't worry, Travis, we'll get you into the Devy game next. We'll get you all the way in.
I'm year 2 in Dynasty, and now Dustin's like, you need Devy. I'm like, can I get 2 or 3 years in this first, man? Come on.
Just keep going. Just keep fighting the bug here. I usually am the one who sits here and is like, all right, let's not do this, folks, because we get there every year and we hype up the next draft class as soon as the draft finishes. We start hyping up, and I'm usually the guy that's like, all right, come on, let's pump the brakes. Let's be rational. Let's not oversell the product here. Folks, next year it's going to be good. All right. I think we're looking at potentially our best class since 2020, just in terms of overall talent. Right off the bat, the guy that we're going to be the most excited about is Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. Bijan Robinson, 6'0", 215. He's an absolute versatile running back. I would not be shocked if in Superflex leagues, he's still the 101. And that is not knocking the quarterback class. Bijan Robinson is a power runner. He's a very sharp runner. And the most slept on feature for Bijan Robinson is his pass catching ability. He actually lines up at wide receiver at times for Texas, and I think he's the second best route runner on that offense behind Xavier Worthy, who we're going to have to wait another year for. Xavier Worthy not eligible till 2024, but at the top is definitely Bijan Robinson, and he comes with some other good running back candidates currently fighting for running back 2. And I like to start talking about the running backs because I feel like for a lot of folks, that's what they hone in on in terms of the strength of the class. But Jahmyr Gibbs, an excellent pass-catching back out of Alabama, follows that up. Zach Evans is a really dynamic running back. He's probably going to end up my running back 2 right now. A really clean runner, former 5-star, powerful, really efficient, and solid hands to go along with it.
Former Horned Frog, like myself.
Former Horned Frog, yep. Yeah. A wild recruiting process. If you ever want to just like lose an hour of your time, just Google Zach Evans recruiting. But he did end up at TCU, and he did pretty well for the Horned Frogs for a couple of years.
He did. I want you to continue on the prospects, but I want to ask, fantasy-wise, just learning-wise for myself.
Yeah.
What type of player would you trade for a 2023 first right now? If you are competing and if you're not competing?
That's a really good question. So here's what I'm gonna do this a little on the fly here, but I actually, so my Devy rankings, I'm just looking at them on the side here. I kind of put a number equivalent to it, so I have a rating scale. So I'm just gonna quickly pull that up against my dynasty rankings to give you an example of somebody who, might be a good switch. So, you look at a guy I mentioned here. So, Bijan Robinson is somebody I'm really high on. So Bijan Robinson right now, in terms of the running back class, I have him like right about the same price, the value point here as I would in dynasty value somebody like Nick Chubb, somebody like Alvin Kamara, like a veteran coming down. Like I would flip.
Interesting.
Obviously there's always inherent risk when you're playing Devy, right? You never know what's going to happen with a prospect, but we're talking about Bijan Robinson coming in and being a tier 1 running back, essentially right off the bat without knowing his landing spot. But I'm expecting him to have first round draft capital pretty locked and loaded there, and could see an ascent in value similar to Jonathan Taylor, 2 years ago after his rookie season. So, you're really looking at a guy that has a power similar to Jonathan Taylor, not quite as strong as Jonathan Taylor or Najee Harris, but a similar level of power with the athleticism that you maybe would have seen from, I don't want to say quite Christian McCaffrey in terms of dual threat ability, but maybe more along the lines of a DeAndre Swift. So it's a really exciting upside guy. And, as you work down a little further, that second tier of guys is probably more in that J.K. Dobbins range, that Dalvin Cook coming down on his value type range. So we're talking about 3 or 4 running backs deep here that, have a legitimate shot to immediately plug into your fantasy lineups next year.
Okay. So if you're on a win now team, so you think, and you get halfway through the season and things aren't going your way, some guys are getting hurt. If you're looking to rebuild or blow something up, how many of those 2023 first do you think would have that type of elite value? Like, are you moving Chubb and Dalvin Cook type for a mid-level 23 first or a late 23 first, or is it just that top tier guy or top tier of 23 first where it looks like it's going to be a top 3 or 4 pick?
Yeah, there's really good depth in this class. So right now, the drop-off point that I have for the first round is 111. So 11 of those picks right now I'm projecting to be pretty valuable. And if you compare that to this past year, right, that drop-off point was about 105. So almost twice as many impact players. And the year before was about 107 was that first round drop-off. So in 107 is going to be kind of an average year. I think last year was a little bit less value, and it's going to look, compared to back-to-back against this stronger class, this year is going to end up looking even weaker. But certainly, for me, I'm acquiring 2023 first at any point. When I trade for a first round pick, I tend to assume it's the 106 no matter what. I try not to read too into, what my opponents look like. But quite frankly, I'm willing to pay for the 111 really aggressively, just as much as I'm willing to go and get that 104, because there's going to be really good depth. And would I say my cheat code for really nailing a rookie draft is to lean into second round picks? People tend to undervalue those, and that's where some of our best value comes from. So if you can go ahead and you're moving pieces and someone's like, well, I'm not willing to give up a first, but I have a couple twos, or, I might even have 3 second round picks. Would you think about that instead? Like, yeah, let's scoop those up too, because those are going to be really valuable to have.
So you're saying, for me, stop throwing a second into a deal like it's nothing.
Stop that immediately.
What about a second? They're like, sure, I'll take that deal. I'm like, thank you. Just take them.
Yeah, no, Travis, don't do that.
All right, now I got to go the other way.
Really good there in the second round in this upcoming year.
Okay, I'm going to start acquiring these.
Thank you for educating my man, Matt. He truly the fantasy football educator there.
Yeah.
Talking about some younger prospects, there are a couple guys that I do want to cover while we've got you here, because one of my favorite prospects, and Travis knows that I have been in love with this guy. 2 guys, or we'll make it 3 guys, because they're pretty in the spotlight right now. First one is Trevor Lawrence.
Yes.
He's kind of polarizing because he's not quite out of the woods of shedding that kind of shaded bust label. It's like right now they're still in the middle of printing that bust label for him. I want your take on, what did he do week 1 to either quiet it or to add on to any speculation that that you might have that he could still be a bust? And what do you see his next few weeks or the season playing out for him like?
Yeah, I think we've gotten a little spoiled the past couple of years with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and some of these guys at the quarterback position coming out and just making an immediate impact, right? This has been a position that traditionally we've given 2 to 3 years for guys to really step into their role. And I think Trevor Lawrence looked better this past week. I think there's reason to be optimistic about him. You know, when it plugs into a fantasy lineup, it's still not exactly the stats you want to be, you know, in a seasonal context, you know, plugging him in with confidence each and every week. But it's important to remember too, Washington, although we generally tend to think about them as an overall dumpster fire, has put a lot of money into their defense, right? And they get a lot of pressure. So Jacksonville's still working on that offensive line. I think they're building the right pieces around Trevor Lawrence, which we found has been just as important, right? I talk about this all the time, but Josh Allen, right, would not be the Josh Allen we didn't know if Buffalo didn't take the time to figure out the pieces that worked around him. And I know, you know, we're looking at, they overpaid Christian Kirk and, you know, they're adding, you know, Marvin Jones and like what's going on with these pieces. And, you know, it's all these, you know, depth of wide receivers. It's Chenault on the way out. But I think Jacksonville under this new coaching regime is taking the time to pair weapons with Trevor Lawrence and not trying to do it the other way around. So it might take a little while. You know, we waited till year 3 for that Josh Allen breakout. I think we're going to be more excited about Trevor Lawrence at the end of this season. And I think he will put up some QB1 weeks by the time we're done with it.
I love to hear it, and I completely agree. I think a lot of the slot guys that they brought in, those inside type receivers, not really your traditional X guys, you know, Christian Kirk, guys that I'll say that fit into an RPO style offense. You know, we know Doug Peterson likes to focus on the tight end and bringing in, you know, a safety blanket of sorts in Evan Ingram, if you really want to call it that. That safety blanket's got a lot of holes. But Evan Ingram's there. Like you said, Christian Kirk. I like Zay Jones in that offense. Marvin Jones still there. If they ever figure out how to get ETN involved, I will stop mentioning it on this show. The next guy,
that's his college buddy, right? They got to figure that out.
They will.
I think they will. Are they going to eat brunch together? Like, is there a college roommate narrative? Can I get something for these guys? Like, can someone please investigate what these two did together at Clemson and just bring that into the NFL? Like, you guys, what was it? Just sitting playing video games, eating Sour Patch Kids? That's fine. Let's make the Sour Patch Brothers. We'll get that going.
They'll figure it out.
I'm off on a tangent. I apologize. Let's talk about Trey Lance. Trey Lance, I don't want to keep this wacky ball rolling. Let's talk about Trey Lance real quick because he faced the Bears. We talked about him in our last show. Do you still have a lot of faith in this guy coming from FCS school, and then now right into the NFL having to save a franchise?
Yeah, it's obviously not a good week 1 for Trey Lance, right? But we're talking about pretty tough conditions to look good in. And I know Justin Fields looked slightly better, but still, we're talking about a literal puddle that they played on for 4 quarters. And a good Bears defense still. Not, a top-tier NFL defense, but still a good defense. So I'm not going to pivot off of Trey Lance at all. I acquired a good bit of Trey Lance over the last 2 years. I'm still really excited about his talent. He's got a big arm. He has great athleticism. And quite frankly, just having that rushing ability can get you pretty far in fantasy football in the long term. So as the season progresses here, I think he's going to settle a little bit more into his role. And I think he's going to end up with some pretty big weeks. So I'm definitely not pivoting off of Trey Lance yet. We're going to put him right back in the lineup with the same level of confidence we had going into week 1. This is one I'm not overreacting to. I think this was a series of tough factors against Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And maybe after the first week, the first month, we have to reevaluate and be a little bit more critical. But for now, I'm going to ride with that blind confidence.
Yeah. One of the things we said, maybe 20, 30 minutes before the show was that the worst game we'll see from Trey Lance this season, fantasy points wise? It probably was.
It's very possible.
Just saw the word. And a lot of it was the weather. It wasn't like, he could have come out there and had 4 points, 5 points. We saw Aaron Rodgers with a 5 or Joe Burrow with a 10. Like the names that were down there it was not just Trey Lance, and none of them were dealing with a hurricane type rainstorm. So I think we did just see the worst of Trey Lance. He could be a nice buy low for people that are freaking out because if you're on Twitter, there's a lot of overreaction. Like, he's not who we thought. Jimmy G's right there. Like, there's enough negative talk about him to at least make an offer to see what you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he had done that in week 6 with good weeks, surrounding it, we wouldn't have blinked twice about it. You know what I mean? So I absolutely agree. If somebody in your league is panicking, I'm buying.
Yeah.
Perfect. Take advantage of it. All right, Matt, one more thing to run by you, and then I'll get you out of here. By the end of the season, do you think that we're really having an honest conversation that Jahan Dotson is the number 1 receiver in Washington?
Oh, man, that hurts my heart because I love my man F1 as well. But Jahan Dotson is my guy. I'm not exaggerating. I'm pretty sure I finished with 90+% exposure in my rookie draft to Jahan Dotson.
That. Oh my!
I scooped him up everywhere.
Nice week 1 for you.
Yeah, I was so excited about that week 1. Doing this rookie analysis, when you hit on that type of value, it's one thing to hit on the top of the class, those 1 through 5 picks. And who knows, Jahan Dotson might not hit in the long run, right? But just in terms of that week 1 feeling, when you get that guy that was in that unsure tier and you just soaked him up, you leaned into that confidence, it's a good feeling. And so right now, Jahan Dotson getting those 2 impressive looking touchdowns, I'm hoping it builds confidence with Carson Wentz over the course of the season, right? Because you could look at that and say he had 2 catches on 3 targets, right? It wasn't actually that much volume. But over the course of the season, that type of chemistry matters, right?
Yeah,
and Carson Wentz looking to hold down this job is going to go to the guy that he feels confident with. So I don't know if Jahan Dotson will be the wide receiver 1 in Washington overall in terms of NFL scheme. But if we can keep Terry McLaurin as the NFL wide receiver 1 and pull top coverage and let Jahan Dotson continue to take the top off the defense and be the fantasy wide receiver 1, hey, that's a win-win for everybody, right? So that's what I'm hoping for. I don't think we could expect 2 touchdowns from him every week, of course, but this was somebody that I projected, I think preseason at 7 touchdowns, and he's already on pace to maybe push past that a little bit.
Yeah, 34 touchdowns this year. It's he's on pace. So
stats don't lie, baby. Stats don't lie.
No, that's right. Can't fudge the numbers. They're there for a reason. Oh man, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, to educate Travis on some dynasty strategy, and of course, talk about Trevor Lawrence because I never get enough of it.
Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it. I learned a lot just in our little time together. I will be reaching out to you often on Twitter.
Yeah, fantastic. Fellas, it was fun to chop it up with you. I love it. It was a nice array of topics. We cut into the college game. We talked week 1. We got some prospect talk in there. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Thanks for educating, man.
Everyone, thanks for listening. Make sure you follow Matt over at the FF Educator on Twitter. And as always, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Losing Sucks. I'm your host, Dustin Blanton, along with Travis Masterson. And this has been Losing Sucks. Remember, losing sucks. Don't do it.